Hello and welcome to the Punch Show. Today we've got a new panel of guests on. Well, a panel of mostly new guests. Awkward has joined us before for one of these, and the representative Jack Kimball has been a guest before, but not for one of these panels. So is everybody ready to step into the light where the real facts glow? What? Do you like my jamming song there?
For sure.
I think we'll do what I like to do with these panels is the first thing we'll do is we'll go around and we're just going to have like an icebreaker question. And today's icebreaker question is, what is your favorite comfort food? Everybody should have like a food that they take comfort in. So
cheese ravioli, that's mine. I'm jumping right in here.
That's
cheese
a good
ravioli.
Do you make your own raviolis, or do you just like buy frozen?
Oh gosh, no, any frozen one. I'm actually not at all picky about this. You know, the ones of the store brand cheese ravioli, I'm real happy.
Are you vegan? So or something?
I'm vegetarian, so I do eat dairy and eggs. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I guess cheese would omit the whole vegan thing. So
yeah.
All right, Priscilla.
Hey, Priscilla.
Hey, Kit. What's up? So my favorite comfort food, it changes a lot. Right now, it's chia seed pudding that I make myself every day.
What pudding?
Chia seed pudding. It's
wow.
Because I want my body to be super if I'm going to be fighting fascists for the rest of my life.
My wife does a lot of chia stuff, and I always, whenever she pulls it out, I go, chia.
It's amazing. It literally heals every part of your body. Like,
wow.
Yeah. I used to have comfort foods that were that were a lot worse. Like, I guess if you'd asked me this 5 years ago, I would have said tostones with mayo ketchup. But that's a lot of grease and a lot of bad things that are not made from nature. So I have switched over to something that loves my body. So.
Well, I have just gone from I've just tried to eliminate heavily processed foods as much as I can.
Yeah.
Like my favorite comfort food is red beans and rice. Louisiana style. Yes. I just get some ham hocks or smoked neck bones actually work really good too. Then they have a lot less fat, but some smoked neck bones, some actual raw beans. I use my own beans, brown rice, and fresh tomatoes and stuff like that. But when I started going to just eliminating processed foods, that's the only change in my diet that I made. Like, I didn't count calories, didn't do any more exercise or anything, lost 20 pounds in 6 months.
Yep, because all those preservatives preserve things in your body that don't need to be there. So,
and it's like you actually eat less
because you feel full.
Because your body actually has to digest the food. It doesn't just pass through you. So you burn more calories digesting your food too. So anyway, It's interesting. You would think you would gain weight or something, but nope. All right. So Teddy Wilson, what is your favorite comfort food?
It's probably tacos or tamales. Are probably the two. And tacos I can make on my own. I make shit tamales. So I usually, if I'm going to eat tamales, I buy from a local place that just makes tamales.
Where do you live?
I live in Central Texas.
Oh, really? You're practically my neighbor then. I live in Logan. I don't know if you do you know what you're in the Austin area?
No, I actually live near College Station.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're not quite my neighbor, but you're not too far away.
Well, I mean, considering the size of Texas, I mean, 2 or 3 hours is kind of neighborly.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
I'm on the Houston side of Austin. Hey, Joe.
Hey.
And so, Jack, what is your favorite comfort food? What do you guys eat in California?
I really am fond of a 1.5 pound lobster stuffed with a smaller 1 pound lobster, which I think I invented, but 3 or 4 years later, Red Lobster started serving it, which I think is actually the real reason why a bunch of them shut down.
Is that like the turkey? What did they call that? The
turducken?
Turducken, is that just like a lobster?
Well, it kind of. It started because one of my friends was ordering out and wanted to know what we wanted. So I pushed for a lobster stuffed with a smaller lobster and a truffle and saffron reduction. And I think now that I might be responsible for what happened to Red Lobster. My second choice, which is really horrible for me, so I eat it like maybe once a year, if that. My mom did one of those homemade things when I was a kid. Turkey, creamed, so right away you know it's healthy. There were peas in it, though, with mushrooms, in like a puff pastry shell.
Mm.
It was amazing. And so I still, it's the one thing that brings me back to childhood, so I'll eat that like I said, every 18 months or so, I would guess.
So kind of like a homemade pot pie kind of thing?
Kind of, And when I got to eat all the shells, the tops of all the puff pastry shells too. So that was always fun.
Do you so you make your own? I just feel like comfort food is a great way to, like, sometimes when it can get overwhelming in this political age, and so sometimes if I just want to detach from everything, like to the process of making the food and eating it is just worthwhile.
Right. Well, when I retired from a day job, one of the things I lost weight about as quickly as you did. And the whole reason was I was no longer so tired that I was either eating fast food or ordering out. I was actually able to cook meals and go do it the right way. And like weight started dropping off without me trying to do anything, which is, if you're not sick, the best way for it to happen.
And my blood pressure fell way down too, because like if you're eating all processed foods and DoorDash and stuff, so much salt in that crap.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, that's enough preaching on the food thing. So, Awkward, what is your favorite comfort food?
All right, let's see if you can hear me. Can you?
Yes.
All right. I guess it has to be chicken pot pie because my mom, who's no longer with us and like was my person, kept me alive until she died. That was like her specialty. So if it comes anywhere near hers, it feels good.
That's one of the reasons I like the red beans and rice. That was my favorite food growing up, and it was like one of my mom's favorite to make. She got it from her mom, and her mom got it from her mom, and her mom got it from her mom. So this is like 5th generation red beans and rice from Louisiana. So I mean, it's done right. All right, so we're gonna well, I think what we'll do first is just to kind of get everybody on board. How about we just go around, everybody just talks a little bit about themselves and kind of where they stand politically. So we'll start with Priscilla this time.
Okay, so where I stand politically is that I believe we need socialism for the 99%. The 1% certainly has it, as we can see through the forgiveness of bank debt and whatnot. but the 99% does not have it, and everything is being extracted out of them. Who I am as a person in this world. I am currently a RICO defendant with the Stop Cop City RICO case out of Atlanta. I was arrested in March of 2023 at a music festival and charged with domestic terrorism because I was wearing black. I served 30 days in DeKalb County Jail in Atlanta, Georgia. I wrote about my experience for Scalawag magazine out of Atlanta. And then in November of 2023, I was indicted on a RICO charge with 60 other people. Right now, it is the largest state level RICO for political activism, and I believe in the entire country. It's a very historic thing that's happening right now, and scary for a lot of people, terrifying, if you will. And when I went in for the indictment for the RICO charge, unlike Trump, who walked in and out, myself and my comrades were kept in jail for over 24 hours. And I wrote about both the DeKalb County Jail and the Fulton County Jail experiences in a piece called How to Survive Jail that was published by Hammer and Hope last year. So I am also a longtime activist since I was a teenager, basically. I'm 51 now. I was one of the day one organizers with Occupy Wall Street in 2011, and I've been working as an activist and a writer and a digital specialist since then. So and I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm originally from Tennessee and Georgia. My family is Puerto Rican. That's a long story of how we wound up there, but that's me.
So
I have a dog and a daughter.
How is Atlanta prosecuting liberals? I thought they only went after Republicans.
Oh no.
No, I'm being facetious here. So.
They put as many people as possible into jails in Georgia. By population, Georgia jails more people than Georgia and like the American South, if you will, Southeast, jails more people than per population than Russia, than Brazil, than all of these places that we're told are just terrible for democracy. We send way more people to jail, and especially down there where they don't have things like public transportation. So most people who wound up in jail there are either homeless or they had some kind of moving violation, like they didn't have a tail light or they didn't, renew their insurance. That could put you in jail for a few days down there. I know. How do I know? I met them all. So, and also additionally, like 95% of the people who are in jail are of color, specifically Black Americans. So we have our own like concentration camps in the United States already happening. And, we can talk about that later, but that's, this whole shipping people off to prisons in other countries. We've been doing this for a very long time. There's so many people who are facing prison right now that if there were a police strike by everyone, it would ground the whole justice system to a halt. So if there's anything I want anybody to take away from our conversation today is if you're facing charges, do not plea out, make them put you in a trial.
Here's a good statistic for you. You probably already know this, but 1 in 5 prisoners worldwide are in American prisons. So.
Yeah. Sorry, that's 20%. Like what?
So okay, the great Jack Kimball, Congressman extraordinaire.
Actually, skip past me for a sec because I have groceries that arrived.
Oh,
and adorable dogs over my shoulder, and they will be doing that the entire time.
Okay, well that sounds kind of rough, but we'll come back to it. Okay, so we'll go down to Teddy Wilson there. I don't know why I want to say both the Teddy and the Wilson. It just kind of rolls off the tongue like that.
All right. I mean, however you want to do it. Yeah. So My name's Dave Wilson. I'm the publisher of Radical Reports, a newsletter that focuses on the radical right. I've been a journalist for about 15 years, a journalist and researcher. I started out in community radio. That's where it all begins for me. And then I've worked for multiple publications. One of the first I worked for is what is now Rewire News Group. I covered the anti-abortion movement in state legislatures for about 5 years. And then I worked for Political Research Associates, and then Open Democracy. And now I publish the newsletter and do freelance reporting and research. As far as politically, it's interesting. I don't talk much about my own kind of political ideology and philosophy. I guess I would probably consider myself a leftist. I kind of, my political awakening came after I left the military, and this was in 2007, and I joined Iraq Veterans Against the War and got involved in protest of private prisons that were detaining immigrants, imprisoning immigrants here in Texas back in 2008, 2009. And then, yeah, so I guess I'm pretty leftist in most of my politics. Although I also can be kind of rather pragmatic when it comes to certain things, but yeah, that's kind of where I am as far as my own kind of political ideology.
Sounds good. What service were you in? What military service?
I was in the Navy.
Navy. Okay. I was in the Air Force. Didn't want my first name to be Seaman, so I joined the Air Force. So, Kit, how you doing? What about yourself?
Hey, it's great to be here. I guess I used to call myself a radical or progressive. I still are those things. I had an article about me come out late last year in the Columbia Journalism Review where they outed me as an anarchist, so I might as well just call myself that. I think Priscilla and I are pretty equally far to the left. I got my start as a full-time journalist during the Occupy Wall Street movement as well. Actually down here in Austin, covering Occupy Austin, which held space at City Hall for almost 6 months until they were kicked out of their space because of the South by Southwest Festival. They actually changed the rules of City Hall to kick us out, just like they did in New York, pretty much to kick them out. And there were a number of undercover cops here who entrapped activists in the Texas Occupy movement into felony charges back in 2011, and that was one of the first stories I broke as a journalist. I was the first person to write about that. I consider myself a movement journalist. I just try to put people first, people and planet, and my rule of thumb as a journalist is if I'm blaming, if the conclusions of your story are blaming poor people or any marginalized group of people, then you haven't dug deep enough. You haven't looked far enough. You're not asking the right questions and looking at the systemic problems. As a journalist these days, as a non-binary trans person, I end up covering a lot of issues that are affecting my community because we're under attack. Trans people are being subjected to genocide in this country and being internally displaced by the hundreds, if not thousands. And it's something that is needs more coverage. I know there's a few Texas people on this discussion, and I really feel like Texas is the proving ground for what's happening nationwide right now. We're seeing so much of what is happening in the federal government was tested first in Texas and other southern states, and I think liberals and progressives outside of Texas don't always realize how important what happens here is to the rest of the country. So I try to speak up for that as much as I can. So that's a lot of what I am.
I think a lot of people that don't live here really underestimate that there is a liberal movement here. Just because we lose does not mean we don't fight. So,
Well, and sometimes sometimes we do win. It's important to remember that, Roe v. Wade originated here. Lawrence v. Texas, which is the, Supreme Court decision that overturned sodomy laws and therefore
yeah,
revolutionized life for LGBTQ people. Again, that started here. And all those decisions, it's also important to recognize that those don't just come out of a vacuum. Those come from deep activist movements that were organizing in their communities for decades before those kinds of things happened. And yeah, that's all continues to be extremely active in Texas. Texas is a place that fights real hard. And yeah, we do lose a lot, but we learn a lot in the process.
So you're in Austin?
I am in Austin.
Cool. Austin is if anybody has never been to Austin, it is one of the most unique cities in the United States. I had somebody describe it as redneck hippie. And it's kind of it is kind of a weird amalgamation of like Texan and hippie, or like whatever. It's just a very
Austin's
unique culture.
Austin's a great place, but of course, in the last several years, we've had, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, and just like a host of evil
Oh
tech
yeah.
bros here. Down on 6th Street, which is like, for people who haven't been here, 6th Street is like the nightclub district. There's a club that used to be originally a punk bar, and after it was a punk bar, it was like an indie film theater for years and years. Now it is Joe Rogan's comedy club right there in the heart of our
Oh
city. And
no.
so yeah, so I love Austin. I still love Austin despite everything, but we really are at war with the tech bros, with this libertarian, anti-human culture that has come and made its home here. The sweeps against homeless people are as ruthless and brutal here as they are against in any
Terrible.
city in the United States. There's a lot of that. So yeah, I love Austin. There's this wonderful culture here, but we also have to fight to keep it because it's been depleted, and all of the things that have happened, gentrification and the movement of the tech bros here has really hurt the character of Austin, sadly.
So Awkward, just so everybody knows, Awkward may have to disappear. He's sticking around as long as he can, but he might have to disappear at some point.
Can you hear me?
I'm gonna guess you're an Antifa militant.
You guys can hear me still?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm about to hop off. The main reason I came on today was just to say that I'm helping Machine Pun Kelly bring these people on. Priscilla, Kit, and Teddy I've known for years and years. I was an on the ground activist from like 96 to 2010, something like that. And when my mom died, and then I met my wife who had 2 kids, I kind of converted to the person that most of you know now. The online person, the hip hop artist, and digital strategist for a variety of revolutionaries. As I said last week, I kind of made up my own leftist title or whatever. I called myself, I think, an eco-humanist. The point I was trying to make last week is that I focus both on people and everything else that was here before us. And I want to protect, as everyone who knows me knows, the oppressed. I want to protect the earth as well. I think it's inextricably tied. And those who know me know I focus predominantly on abolition and anti-fascism. I co-founded 10 Demands, an abolitionist org in 2020. And that's really enough. And I also wanted to just conclude by saying I invited Jack. He's a newer friend, and my goal with helping Kelly is to create a diverse as possible audience. It's still leaning heavily white. I'm working on that. Very glad to have Priscilla and Kit here this time because, Kit, as they discussed, is dealing with a lot right now as a trans person and non-binary person. Priscilla, in addition to the RICO charges, obviously, is a brown Hispanic woman, obviously in increased danger. Jack, I would guess, is somewhat to the right of obviously Priscilla, Kit, and myself, and that was intentional. The goal here, as Kelly will probably expound on, is to demonstrate that we are all on the same side in spite of our differences. And what keeps us together is the fact that we love each other. The right hates pretty much everyone that isn't them, that isn't a white, rich, straight, cis man, whatever. So that's the goal of this. And I have to go see my daughter. So thank you very much, everybody, for agreeing to come on with us. And if I don't join again today, I'll probably see you next week.
All right. Enjoy your time with your daughter. That's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Peace.
Peace. So as he was saying, like, my goal in this is, like, I looked at what happened in South Korea, where it was not like a singular movement that overthrew the dictator. It was people with a lot of different views, but with a common goal that were able to come together. So, like, I don't think we need to agree on everything in order to agree that we need to get rid of Trump, like, that he is the biggest danger to the country. And not just in a lot of ways. I don't think he is the danger. I think he is the puppet for the real danger, which is, the Federalist Society and Putin. I don't like, he has to have all those evil executive orders he signs explained to him, and he barely understands what they're saying. So Priscilla has her hand raised.
I would say that the real enemy right now is capitalism, and that is the root of the problems that we all face. Trump and Putin are really just serving that system through their dictatorships. Not, yes, it is them at the head, but the reason so many people are like going along with it is because we have this capitalist system that prioritizes profit over people at all costs, right? And so we really have to get clear about what our real enemy is, because things weren't great under Biden. He actually deported more people, in this time period than Trump has. Obama, again, separated families as well before Trump even thought to do that, right? He did that because it was already in place. The real problem is capitalism and, racism. Capitalism enables racism, and racism props up capitalism. So that
kind of goes back to the founding of our country in a very, very obvious way.
Was it founding, or was it thievery?
Oh, even pre-founding, the colonizing of our country.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, which was driven, again, by capitalism. They didn't come over here just because they're looking for a new place to live. They're looking for things to steal, right?
Yeah. I like to say the most fundamental American right is mine. That's the way, like, and to me, that's what capitalism comes down to. This is mine. This is mine. This is my house. So if you come and break into my house, I have a right to murder you. Or if, you try to steal my wallet, I get to shoot you. It's to, if I feel, feel like you're like, if somebody were to come and carjack my car, I don't want to murder them. I don't want to lose my car. But I'm not going to kill somebody over a car.
Why are they trying to carjack your car? Oh, because they don't have resources. Why don't they have resources? Oh, because we live in this system that has put a price on everything.
Yeah, yeah.
From childcare to food to all these things that we actually need to live in this world. You know, people react to the situations that they're put inside. So, like, is that person stealing something, or are they resource gathering under punishment?
I wanted to ask you and Kit a question, because you both said you were part of the founding of Occupy Wall Street, and when you said that, it kind of struck a thought in me, and my thought like, to me, Occupy Wall Street was kind of one of the formational events of the millennial activists. Like, that is something I normally associate with millennials, and not in a bad way, just saying, like, you know, for most of Gen X, I think, you know, a lot of Gen X had their political ideologies formed by Reagan, maybe the wall coming down and the Cold War and stuff like that. But for millennials, I think it's more, you know, like Occupy Wall Street. You're
also
you're not fitting into that
I'm
niche.
totally Gen X, by the way, and a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you're a little bit younger than me, but you're Gen X. You are like right in the middle of Gen X, right? Like, I'm old Gen X, but you're like right in the middle of Gen X.
Yeah.
So how did you come to be like Occupy Wall Street?
Because it was an amazing possibility. It was going to happen in an area of town where people don't live anymore, and it was going to mess up the days of bankers. I was all for it. Like, let's go, let's do this. I can't speak to Kit's experience, but when I first heard that this was being planned, I showed up at a planning meeting like the next day.
Wow. Were you like one of the older people there, or were there other Gen X's?
In New York, I can only speak to New York. I visited other Occupies later on. That's how I met Kit when I went to Occupy Austin. But in New York, it was really diverse in a lot of different ways. Like, lots of women were there and in leadership. Lots of Black and brown people were around and in leadership. You know, lots of ages. Like, it wasn't as
homogenous,
uniform as I saw in other cities.
Okay.
So, and then you have places like Atlanta that has like kind of a large homeless population. I mean, it was shocking to me on Wednesday. I went to court on Wednesday, and around the corner from the courthouse was an encampment of literally like almost 100 people alongside of a church. Just can't, it's like they're, anyway. But in Atlanta, it wound up being a lot of unhoused folks, which meant it was all Black and brown people, you know? So
Kit, were you before, were you politically active or even like aware or involved? Like, where were you at before and after? Like did the whole Occupy Wall Street collapse, all of that stuff, is that what made you aware, or were you just already aware and that was like became a platform for you to jump on?
The latter. I was basically raised as an activist. There's a photo of my mother somewhere holding me as a baby at a protest against the death penalty in where I was born in New England. So I had a lot of awareness, I think, from a pretty young age, thanks to my folks, especially my mother, but also my father. And they're both pretty excellent allies and very active today. I'm very lucky to have them on our side. Yeah, I was raised in a sort of activist culture. I hadn't been super involved in things as far as like being out in the streets as much before Occupy. It did give me a place to start organizing within. I'd been involved in some smaller local causes before that, but not to the degree with which I ended up throwing myself into the Occupy movement. I also had been a writer and a journalist before that, but Occupy really gave me an opportunity to become a full-time journalist. So I would say, to sort of steal a term from the tech industry, that Occupy was kind of an incubator for a lot of people who became full-time activists in one way or another, or full-time organizers, not necessarily for a living, that's a, you know, but just, you know, who really threw themselves into it. You know, I happen to know here, like the head of the Texas Sierra Club, Dave Cortez, he's someone who was involved in Occupy Austin, or the Austin, this is the Lone Star Sierra Club, the local chapter here, not the Texas one as well. But yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of people who were involved in that. Like Priscilla said, also Occupy here drew in a huge amount of the unhoused population. Something really interesting, since we're talking about organizing, the reason that there's a curfew on the main waterway through Austin, what's called Town Lake, is because in the 90s, the unhoused population built a raft community on it. They built a 24-hour occupation of our waterway in protest of their lack of resources. And in response to that, the city actually put a curfew on Town Lake, our main waterway, as a protest for that. And people don't really know about that. That's kind of a piece of forgotten history here. But yeah, the unhoused community really came together in around Occupy as well here.
When was that?
That was in the 90s, I believe, that happened here. Yeah.
Was that when Ann Richards was governor?
I want to say probably, yeah, I think so. Gosh, my timeline on that in my head is not as clear as it probably should be. But yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Yeah. So yeah, so that's something that kind of, you know, and you're talking about, like, you know, organizing, you know, there's also, of course, the whole, what came to me known as the anti-globalization movement. I wasn't really involved with that, but I was kind of watching that as I grew up, and that kind of inspired me, that there were people out in these mass mobilizations against the horrors of global capitalism. And I think that was one of my influences, that then when Occupy kicked off was there in the back of my head, is like, here's something that people have done. I've been watching some of their tactics, and I know that was something that inspired a lot of people who were involved in the various Occupy movements. Texas had a really thriving, just like Occupy scene from Houston, Austin. Actually, one of the longest occupations in the country was in Lubbock, Texas. They had a set of tents up in like a no man's land in the center of an intersection, basically, that because it was like in this weird, like, sort of gray area of who owned the land, they were not able to kick those tents out for, gosh, I think they were there for like over a year past like some of what the other occupations were shut down. So Texas really showed up for Occupy. Again, that's another example, I think, of people not realizing just how much of people here are willing to put up a fight if they're given a platform to do so.
So, Jack, is there like a moment or an event that kind of formed, that had a transitional effect in your political view, or were you just...
Oh yeah. So first off, I mean, I play Jack Kimball, who is a very clueless MAGA Republican, and I've been around online since 2009, so pre-MAGA, which was when it was a lot easier to do political satire. It really was. You'd say something stupid and people wouldn't think, oh, it's just another politician on the MAGA side saying something stupid. But I grew up in a Republican family, and I remember when I went away to college, and I'm 56, so we're talking, I was there for the for Bush's 1988 election. I was still a Republican. I graduated, and I started having second thoughts. And I will honestly say, I became a Chicago public schools teacher, and that's one of the big defining moments for me. But it was actually 2003. I voted I think I did vote for W the first time. I don't quite remember. But things like a lot of the Republican, that war where they were going to welcome us as liberators to the Middle East, the economy, a whole lot of things were just going to heck. And Bush was going to make a speech that night. And I was like, okay, I wonder what this is going to be about. Hopefully we'll get, some progress. And the speech was outlawing gay marriage. And it was suddenly like I saw the emperor had no clothes. It was like, oh, so you have no solutions to the real problems, so you're just going to throw red meat at the base. And of course, I taught in schools that were, I would say, 80 to 90% Mexican immigrants, either first or second generation. And so I got outside my comfort zone. I dealt with people having different problems and could see the roles that government played to make things easier for them, as well as the ways that government made things harder for them. I used to always say, and remember, this is pre-Trump, that there were two monumental presidents of the 20th century. FDR, who created a generation of Democrats, and W, who created a generation of Democrats. And obviously that's changed. Being a teacher, I suddenly had my eyes open. And it's kind of like if you ever known an ex-smoker or an ex-drinker, or maybe someone who's given up eating processed foods, nobody is more anti-smoking than an ex-smoker. So it's like now that I saw in front of me, oh, okay, that kind of was what took me in the opposite direction. I probably have grown slightly to the right. I was one of the founders of a very progressive union caucus called CORE in 2010 and helped bring an amazing woman and a friend of mine before she passed, Karen Lewis, to the leadership of the Chicago Teachers Union. But I also saw how, if you're not careful, the Who song, "Here's to the New Boss," same as the old boss, as power becomes more important than principle. When we started our organization, there were very strict principles to get people back to the classroom right away and not have people in positions of power building and building and building and getting further and further away from the classroom. And we failed at maintaining that. And so it just kind of became a power grab. And that's a shame. I'm very proud of what we did, but it kind of, and so I've kind of, I kind of call them hipster Democrats that I have a problem with, or hipster voters, who are people who like a candidate until they have any support or any chance of winning. As long as they don't have a chance of winning, they're amazing. And then as soon as they might win, they're a sellout. I'm definitely to the left of the Democratic Party, but I always believed, like I said, Karen Lewis was a very important figure in my life. And she used to say, if we go to the courtroom, if we, deal with politics, that's the boss's tool. The streets are our tool. And she also strongly believed that you fight in the streets, but you also fight at the top. And I believe that that's one of those things where elections to me are all about harm reduction.
There you go.
But
I think that's definitely something you have to, if you think about it, there are the Republicans have a 6 to 9 Supreme Court.
Right.
5 of those 9 justices are on the court because of protest votes. And there are a lot of things, a lot of the most important dramatic decisions in the last 20 years, like Dobbs like Citizens United that would have gone differently. And if you know, like if Gore and or Clinton and or you know, well now Harris were president instead of you know like Trump or Bush, and you know like these are like, and this is one of the like this kind of comes back to the you can acknowledge that the Democrats aren't perfect and still say they are different from the Republicans. And I have some people, like I have people that will argue with me, there's no difference, but yeah, there is a difference.
I kind of
One
feel
side is okay with gay marriage. One side is okay with due process. Even like, you know, I have a lot of differences with the Democrats, but I also can look at it objectively and say I can identify more with the Democrats than I can with the Republicans.
I think the way that I look at it, and it's a sad way to look at it, is it's like the old folk tale of the frog and the scorpion.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trapped in a perpetual cycle of frog versus scorpion elections where the one person is actively trying to harm you and the other person isn't actively trying to harm you. But if you get harmed along the way to what they are actively trying to do, so be it. And that's kind of the issue I have. In Illinois, we had a pretty bad Democratic governor named Pat Quinn. And
you know what you call an honest Illinois politician?
He didn't go to jail, which put him better than like.
Here's what do you call an honest Illinois politician?
What?
Carpetbagger. Because they don't have any. See, that's the joke.
And it's funny, as much as I fought our current governor, I actually like him quite a bit. But I really
he beats Blagojevich, who I sadly voted for.
His sister was such a neoliberal, like she was on the school board, so I knew her very well, and she would like write editorials in the paper about life from her veranda. She looks out on the beautiful city below, and it's just like, let them eat cake. And but I knew a lot of Democrats when and further left than that who were when Pat Quinn was running for election were really rooting for Governor Rauner because they thought he's so terrible, he's going to crash the whole system down. And he got elected and he made things way worse. He just stopped paying bills. And they got up. And then after that, those same Democrats were like, Trump gets elected, it's going to bring the whole system crashing down and things will get better. And that didn't happen. And now it's his second election, and I'm still hearing those same people going, oh, I hope Trump gets elected so they can crash this whole system. No, the system is not going to crash, at least not the parts that you want to have crash.
It's like Al Franken put it best. You don't debate the color of the curtains when the house is burning down.
Yeah, you know. So yeah, I definitely I strongly support activism and being out in the streets. I've been there myself, although my current back situation, I tend to be more of a keyboard warrior right now. But I feel like there's a lot of things we can do outside the election. And if we wait for the right, strongly, what do you call it? The right, strongly worded Chuck Schumer letter to make change, it's not going to happen, you know?
So let's go on to Teddy there. And Teddy, do you have any kind of events that shaped your political views or
Well, I would say there's an event that I experienced that probably put me on the path to focusing my journalism and my research on the far right and extremism. And so from about 2008 to 2009, I was a volunteer escort at a local abortion clinic when I lived here in Texas. A clinic that would eventually be shut down by the Texas Republicans, not through HB2, which was the law that was passed targeting abortion clinics with all kinds of regulations. They were actually forced to close because of Medicaid restrictions that Texas Republicans passed in, I think that was 2011. Anyway, so in 2009,
Your microphone is. Can you turn up your? You're a little bit soft on your voice. It's hard to hear what you're saying.
let me.
All right, can you hear me better now?
Oh, much better. Yes.
Okay, I just turned off my Bluetooth. Sometimes that mic doesn't work as well.
Mhm.
So in 2009, when I was escorting, I happened to be escorting on the day that Dr. George Taylor was assassinated in Kansas. And I distinctly remember many things about that day, the feeling of the people in the clinic, the discussions that the escorts that we were having outside, this kind of overwhelming sense of terror from the the way that the protesters outside the gates, it just created this new sense of threat. And so I think that was a really foundational moment for me and set me on the path to covering the far right, beginning with the anti-abortion movement. And I think, and to add to kind of some of this discussion that's been going on, I think it's useful when we talk about kind of how do we respond to this moment. I think it's useful to remember that there are other examples that we can look to how to respond. The far right, I think it's important to remember, is a transnational movement.
Mhm.
And I think,
That's a very good point.
and if we look
Can you
to,
expand a little bit on what you mean by that? Because
well, I mean that, we've seen far right authoritarians rise in power across the globe. It's a movement that learns from each other. Like you'll see the far right in America adopt strategies and tactics and rhetoric that have been used elsewhere. I think a really good example of that is I think we've seen um, particularly now members of the Trump administration, but even before that, it was starting to get prevalent in right-wing media, this terminology called that they use gender ideology, right? That is not a new term. That is a term that was used heavily by the far right in Europe, and by the far right in South America to demonize and marginalize the LGBTIQ community. Also, it was used to target gender equality and reproductive rights. It is a term that has its genesis within the Vatican, within the Holy See back in the 1980s. So I think it's just all that is to say that the far right learns from other elements of the far right. And I think as leftists, I think we can learn from various leftist movements around the world that have successfully pushed back against the far right. In Europe, I think they have been relatively successful at pushing back against the far right because they are parliamentarian systems. They are much better at forming coalitions than we have historically been. They have also been much better at holding the political leaders accountable. With the recent court cases of, say, like Marie Le Pen in France being convicted and barred from the ballot. Also, Joel Bolsonaro in Brazil, and in other movements in Latin America too, I think are important to look to. There's been really, I think, significant successes by the reproductive justice movement in Latin America and pushing back against the criminalization of abortion and pushing back some of those laws. So I think when we think about the strategies and tactics, I think there's two key things: learn from other movements around the world, and then empower the grassroots local movements here in America. I think it's no coincidence that a lot of us are from red states, and I think there are really successful on the ground grassroots movements in particularly the southern states, but also throughout kind of other red states. And they are mostly led by women of color and queer folks. And I think if we would really just give them the more resources and let them do what they're doing and learn from them, I think that would really push the progressive and leftist movements forward. So those are kind of my observations and what I think about kind of how we push back against the far right authoritarian movement in America.
So like for me, my big pivotal moment, and this will kind of tie in, was I was in the Air Force in 1990 when the wall came down, and I was actually TDY in Germany, and I was sitting in a restaurant in Germany when the news broke, and Priscilla and Jack will remember this, maybe Teddy. I can't tell how old you are, but I think, are you Gen X?
I'm like right on the cusp.
I
was born in 1980, so I'm kind of in that weird.
Okay.
The zillennial.
But
Yeah,
I hate that term. Don't ever call me that.
But Jack, Priscilla, and I will remember that the Cold War was just such a thing, and the wall coming down was kind of like.
Yeah, like I never
insane. You just couldn't imagine it. It was such a metaphor for the whole Cold War. And I was in Germany in a restaurant when it started to happen, and people were clambering up on the wall and literally tearing it down. And the restaurant was full, and there were Germans just crying, like tears streaming down their face. It was so emotional to them.
I bet.
As you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
And it was like one of those moments where you realize you don't, Americans aren't the only people that love their country. And so it made me start thinking outside of I'm an American. And it's kind of like I wrote a Substack recently on how I think patriotism is overrated. And I've had people try to explain to me, well, there's nationalism and there's patriotism, and patriotism is good and nationalism is bad. And I know that whole thing. But I'm saying patriotism is not really all it's sold out to be either. There's nothing you can say about, that justifies patriotism that doesn't, you can't just say the same thing about humanism. Like you can just love people, and so I think what's wrong with open borders?
Exactly. Nature moves past borders without a problem. Money moves past borders.
We had open borders for 150 years, and all that happened is America grew and prospered. Borders, so what? It's maybe, I can see, a certain criminal background check for violent criminals or something. You don't want murderers coming over here to, not have to face the consequences of murder or something. But that's such a tiny percent of people. It's less than a fraction of a percent of people that cross the border illegally. Most people that cross the border are just wanting jobs. And if we legalized every single undocumented immigrant right now, it would add $1.7 trillion to the economy. To deport them all would take away $1.7 trillion from the economy. They are a benefit to America. So why not just let them in? They're people. They're just people. Why do we have to look at people as American or not American? Why can't we just look at people as people? So that's kind of that is my evolution. But whenever goes back to that moment to realize, America first doesn't have to be America only, that other countries can, have feelings and thoughts, and they have histories. I've been to 36 countries. Every single one of them has a history. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where I'm at. I just think that people matter first, and not what imaginary lines you were born within.
Right. I mean,
So,
I don't completely 100% agree, but I about 90%.
That's all right. You're allowed to be wrong.
I about 90% agree. The only thing is, in Chicago, in a very immigrant-heavy neighborhood, I did see how it could overwhelm services. And a large part of why it overwhelmed services was because of the fact that being illegal meant it kept them off of a lot of official numbers. But when you're being funded for a school and you have space for a school for 700 kids and you have 2,100 students there, that makes a big difference. And I do think that that's a kind of an unusual case. So I would say there needs to be an organized system instead of everybody just come over. But what we have is not that. And even the way that we want it to work, quote unquote, is not that either. It's impossible for people, when they say come over legally, it's impossible for people to do it.
When they say get in line, there is no line. There is literally no line. There is no visas granted for low-wage workers. Like, there is no line to get in.
And then my other thing is, we just took in 58 white South Africans. And honestly, I don't dislike all white South Africans because that covers a whole range of people. One of my heroes is Johnny Clegg, who was a white South African who was playing and did a lot to when he died, it was the Zulu Nation wept. I mean, he was one of my heroes. But who deserves priority are people from Guatemala, people from El Salvador, people from Venezuela, people where our intervention in the 1980s, or in Guatemala's case, we've got a rural environment which is paying for our global climate change. If we mess up the other person's house, the least we can do is let them crash with us, And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of that there too. And let me shut up and let some other people talk.
Hey, okay. Are you a Cardinals fan?
No, this is Chicago Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals before they were the St. Louis. Before they were St. Louis, and before that they were Chicago.
I was gonna say, man, a Chicago, a Cardinals fan in Chicago. I'm surprised you're still alive.
The white. It was, we used to have the Bears and the Cardinals were kind of the White Sox, and the Cubs were the Bears. So.
Okay, all right, Priscilla.
So, Jack, you're a senator.
I play a congressman. I'm just a retired teacher.
Okay, so House of Representatives.
Right.
So, Representative Kimball, I would like to gently push back on what you just said about overwhelming the schools and remind everyone that the real problem is capitalism. The reason that school was underfunded and unable to serve the entire community is because it wasn't given money, because a lot of money was given to the cops and to the military, which right now overwhelmingly is like the biggest line item in any municipal or federal budget at this point. Like, we start hacking away at the military, we start hacking away at the cops, which is just the local military, and we will have the resources that we need right now for schools, for people in community who need healthcare and public transportation and all of these things. A lot of the quote unquote criminality that people refer to, again, it's not criminality, it's resource gathering. And we need to start, changing our minds to that. And, also we have a lot of people who are coming into the US right now because they're climate refugees, right? Like, we have more Puerto Ricans living on the mainland right now than in Puerto Rico. And that is because of the climate crisis that is caused by the largest polluter in the world, which is the US military and their bases all over the planet. So, like, if we want to talk about the resources that are strained, the real, villain right now is militarization of our communities, both hugely broadly from the federal government in the United States and locally from the police, who receive equipment and support from the military. So they're really the same thing right now. And they're both propped up by corporations who are using them to criminalize people like myself who want to push back against these narratives that we need like cop cities everywhere with fake clubs to teach you how to like kill enemy combatants that I consider community members, and the little old lady who goes to the church, you know, like that's not who, you know, the enemy is. The enemy is this economic system that is really punishing everyone in its path.
Yeah. And
you know, Priscilla, just to tag on to that, 80% is it? No, I'm sorry. Is it maybe 75%? 75% of refugees right now worldwide have become refugees since 2010. So in the last 15 years. I think in 2010 it was like 10 million refugees worldwide, and now it's like 50 million. And 80% of those refugees created in the last 10 years have been a direct result of climate change.
Oh yeah, a country like Guatemala, like I said, is full of them. But one thing I did want to mention though is I have totally seen how city government transfers money above board from the schools to the cops. You know, ways that, wait, why are we paying for that? Yeah.
Representative Kimball, how did you vote on appropriating funds to send to Israel to continue their war against their genocide in Gaza and Palestinian lands?
Oh yeah, I definitely would not have voted for that.
He's not an actual representative, right. So
he didn't
have he's a parody.
I am a parody online. Yeah,
you're a parody of a representative.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
He represents California.
of a very conservative MAGA, who was pre-MAGA, but yeah, I very much, yeah, to
basically level an entire community, like that's a climate crisis event. Like what is happening in Gaza right now, in Sudan, and these other places, it's an event that is causing climate crisis on a scale that we can't even imagine, but we will when the superstorms come and level our houses.
Well,
that's right, because the people that are causing it are going to be dead by then, as George W. Bush once said.
I just feel like they're gonna. I mean, it was driving me crazy was when Trump was trying to get the neighboring countries to take the people from Gaza and saying he couldn't. And that's because there's an active war going on. People don't like having their homes destroyed. They're going to go back and they're going to attack Israel. And then then the US is going to say they're harboring terrorists and bomb them because they were nice enough to take people, you know, who are refugees from Gaza. So it's a never-ending fight.
Actually, like that's a historic that is ignoring the actual history of what happened in Palestine. When Jewish people started moving to Palestine, Palestinian families brought them in.
Right.
Palestinian families taught them how to work with the environment, how to cook the foods like that. And for years, for decades, in the face of the Nakba and extreme violence, you know, Palestinians were still trying to react to this with kindness and nonviolence and flying kites on a beach and renaming a cow as a mayor. Like they, you know, there was a lot of nonviolent activity that happened for decades before we got where we are now.
One of Israel's greatest bombers was Rahm Emanuel's dad. So, I mean, the history of terrorism, you go back and it starts with Israelis blowing up their neighbors instead of their neighbors attacking them. It's, you know,
what people don't talk about is that in World War I, this goes back, like, I mean, it actually goes back before World War I, but a lot of the current problems actually started in World War I, where Britain was simultaneously promising Palestinians land if they would join in the fight against the Ottomans, and at the same time with the Balfour decision promising Jewish people the same land.
Right.
And so they were giving Jewish people homes that Palestinians owned, and the Jewish people were buying those homes not knowing that they were owned by somebody. So it's like if somebody sold my house and somebody just came in and acted like they own the house, I would be kind of offended by that. You know, I don't blame the Palestinians for like wanting to keep their own house after they fought for them in a war that wasn't their war. Like, right. You know, and that's where you had the British promise both groups the same land, and both fought for it. But you know, and then you know, World War II and Israel and all. Like, I think we look at these things and we're like, one side is good and one side is bad, when it could be both sides deserve sympathy and both sides have done things wrong. Like it's not just nuanced, it's extremely complicated. And we need to like stop worrying about whose fault it is and start worrying about how we can fix it. And certainly the way to fix it is not ethnic cleansing. So, you know, and that seems to be the solution that the entire West is settling on. But anyway, there's that rant. I did this to me, like in so many ways, I feel like October 7th, October 7th, 2023, Donald Trump won the election, because that became the dividing factor between the left and the Democrats that ended up leaving a lot of people staying home.
All of our grievances are connected through Palestine.
Yeah.
Like Israel trains police forces all over the country, including Atlanta. Atlanta, Georgia has a program called Gilly where they send their police officers to Israel to train, and vice versa, which is why you have such insane levels of surveillance in Atlanta, Georgia. You know, while you have a homeless encampment of almost 100 people right across the house, around the corner from the courthouse, they're spending an enormous amount of money on their police, $100 million on a cop city, you know, that is destroying the neighborhood around it. It's a historically Black neighborhood. And now they're going to be terrorized with even more, because they had a firing range, and that they still have a firing range in that neighborhood that's next door to a high school, that kids, as they're studying during the day, are hearing gunfire go off just regularly.
Insane. What's the worst that could happen, right? Yeah. And just in your one point about, so I'm going to get to Kit next, but I wanted to mention one thing about the whole funding thing with the Department of Defense. I have a friend who has nothing to do with defense spending at all, or the military at all, but he's involved in like government funding projects, and he's like, everybody's goal is to get funded under the defense budget. Like, I don't like, if you're like clean water or whatever, everybody tries to get characterized as defense spending, because that's the one thing the military, like defense, like Congress, it's like off limits. Nothing in defense spending can get touched. And maybe we should like change that priority to where it's not defense spending is the thing that matters the most. Anyway.
Yeah, women, like people who can get pregnant, should be able to defend their uterus from an unwanted invasion. And so we should have fully funded abortion, free for everybody. It is healthcare.
I never understood why they act like it's somehow that specific healthcare is something that, because they disagree with it. And it's not even, by the way, the only person that ever commits an abortion in the Bible, just in case you ever want to read it, is God. But we don't need to go into that. Kit, you have been waiting patiently for a while. I'm sorry.
I'm not the best at fighting my way into these types of conversations. I appreciate that. I guess I've had a bunch of stuff I was going to jump into, but the thing I'll bring up right now, I just had a story come out today in a publication here in Texas called Deceleration, which I really appreciate them a lot. They're a great nonprofit that does some cool work. The piece I just had come out is about the vote that just happened in San Marcos over ceasefire resolution at their city council. And that's something that, you know, I think at this point over 100 cities around the United States have passed a ceasefire resolution. Nowhere in Texas has, because of the threats from our governor. But San Marcos was the first city council in Texas to vote on it, to have the open debate, to bring a resolution calling for a ceasefire. And they've been trying since 2024 to make that happen. And when it didn't happen for them, they ran their own city council candidate and changed the face of their city council in order to make this happen.
Wow.
And I spoke to Amanda Rodriguez, who is the city council member that they elected. San Marcos has a majority non-white, I think they're majority Latinx city council in this college town. And, you know, what she said to me is, you know, Palestinian liberation has always... What? I'm sorry?
Texas Tech? I forget.
Southwest. It's, oh my gosh, Texas State University. Texas State. They've changed their name over the time I've been here. Texas State University is there. But, you know, also that's something to bring up too, is that a lot of times their activism gets kind of labeled as a student town, student activism. But like Amanda's lived there her whole life, the person they just elected to the city council. You know, a lot of the people there, maybe they came there for the college and then they moved there, but a lot of them also have lived there their whole lives. It's just a really diverse community. It's a community that really came together on this issue, and it's something where they really recognize the interconnectedness. You know, for Amanda, you know, she sees how people are struggling. You know, when she goes door to door block walking during the election, you know, everybody she talks to is struggling to get their ends meet, you know, to eat, to pay the rent, to do all those things. And then you look at the millions upon millions of dollars that are going to these overseas conflicts, that are going to the police instead of social services. It's not hard to draw those connections. And once you start seeing that, I think it really does become clear how all of our issues are connected. And, you know, I admire so much what they're doing down there in San Marcos, because it's like they've been organizing in the streets, they've been doing protests, they've been doing dance-offs and festivals and all that stuff, but they also did make a choice to engage with their local democracy and try to make a change, you know, in the local scene. And obviously Amanda, like, you know, the Palestinian conflict inspired her to run, but she is engaged on all these other issues. You know, there was a tragic police shooting down there last year where a young man named Malachi Williams was killed by a police officer. And, you know, those Palestinian liberation activists, they've been coming to the city council week after week to talk about that issue. They were already experienced, they knew the process. And so when Malachi Williams was shot, they were positioned perfectly to also come and speak out against that. And I think that's a great example of how that really connected these issues. You know, they saw the police, you know, like Priscilla pointed out, a lot of these police have been trained in Israel. There's this whole sort of warrior mentality that pervades how we treat all of these issues in the United States that really spills over from our militarization. You can't be the biggest warmonger in the world and not have that come home to roost here in our own communities. And we're seeing that just so violently and so horrifically right now. Anyway, I just want to draw attention to what they're doing down in San Marcos. I think it's really inspiring the way that they've brought all this big coalition together. They've elected people, so they're engaging with the local democracy, but they're also organizing in the streets. You know, something I just wanted to bring up that's been my motto right now, that I took from the writer Margaret Killjoy, is that we have to de-escalate every conflict that's not with our enemies right now. And we have to just focus on building the kind of communities like the conversations that we're having right now. You know, I have a lot to say about elections. You know, I think it's important to remember too that like the biggest voting bloc in this country are the people that don't vote at all. And so I know it's understandable why people get upset about protest votes. I'm sympathetic to both sides of that issue, to be honest. But we have to recognize that the majority of people are just completely disenfranchised, and shaming them hasn't been working. Telling them that they have to vote or else just isn't working. And I'm watching as more and more people are joining that disenfranchised group. You know, I see right now we are so far off from the next presidential election, and yet I already see Democrats telling transgender people that they need to hold their nose and vote for Gavin fucking Newsom. Yeah. He's not even our candidate yet, and you're telling me that I need to vote for somebody that doesn't give a damn about my human rights. That is crap. we need to make demands at some point of people. We need to be out there making demands. And yeah, if you decide, I don't talk about how I vote, and I never will. And if you decide to hold your nose and vote later on for somebody, we can have that discussion. But right now, we're so far off from that, and we need to recognize that there's all these people that are just being driven out of and disenfranchised. If the next election comes along and the presidential candidate is somebody who doesn't just completely support transgender rights in a very unambiguous way, trans people are just not going to vote. And it's not going to matter how much you shame us and how much you tell us to hold our nose. We're just not going to come out. And that already happened in the last election with a lot of Palestinian people. Yeah, you can say that Trump is worse for them than Biden. We can have a debate about whether or not that's true. And I think that Trump probably is worse than Biden, but I also understand why these people just felt completely disenfranchised. And we need to recognize that the system is just not working for a lot of people in this country. And we've got to grasp that. We've got to figure that out. Right now, we got to work with the Jill Stein voters too, even if that kind of pisses you off. We've got to come to the table, all of us at this moment, because we're not even at the next election. We don't even know if the next election is going to happen right now because we're so far from that. We've got to grasp the moment that we're in right now. And that means building these really broad coalitions with people maybe we don't always like or agree with, or maybe we like but just disagree with. I certainly think y'all are cool, even if I disagree with sometimes, with people on this call. Y'all are good people, and I want to build solidarity with all these sorts of people. That's kind of that's my rant that I had holding up there. So
that is an exceptional rant, and this is where I say that, looks, we lost him. But this is where I say that what's so important to me is that we there he's back. Okay. What's so important to me is like I think David Hogg and what he's doing is an important example. And that is, like, we need to have primaries be primaries, not primaries be coronations. And let anybody that wants to run, give everybody a voice. You cannot empower people by disempowering them. And if by that I mean you can't sit there and say, every vote counts after the primary. Like, if your vote counts, your vote should count in the primary. Whether you're a Bernie Sanders voter or you're just a Gavin Newsom voter or a Pete Buttigieg. Like, I hear so many people saying, we can't, have Pete Buttigieg because he's gay and America's not ready for a gay president. I don't care if you think somebody's ready or not, if America's ready. I don't care if you think that America's not ready for a female president because of Hillary and Kamala. Let people vote for who they want to vote for. End of story. Let them vote for the platform they want to vote for. Then they can feel empowered. Like, if they're empowered in the primary, they will at least be able to say, at least I was able to have my voice heard during the primary. So it's easier to get on board with the general election. Like, I've never had anybody I voted for in the primary win the primary. Like, it's a sad but true legacy. But I still, I've always, kind of, in the end, I end up voting for who the Democrat is, because it always beats the Republican, and I'm able to recognize it as a choice between two at that point. Anyway, just very much echoing Kit's rant there, and I think that this is the time for people to be heard, and to be, and not just heard but asked. Like, we need to hear other voices. We need to listen to other people so that, we might change our perspective. We might learn something. Like, that is the legacy of an adult society, is that we can learn. Why did learning become such a bad thing at some point in time? So anyway, let's pass it on to Jack now.
Okay, I'll try to be brief, but so this kind of comes back to something that came up before about red states and blue states. What's the most bluest state? Is it? I mean, it's not actually a state. Is it Washington D.C.? And Democrats win by about 25%, maybe 30% if they have a strong candidate. Utah, the Republicans win by 20%. But what that means is there's 35% Republicans in the bluest state, and there's 45% Democrats in the reddest state. And you can't just go, oh, those are all Democrats, because most of the time it's almost half the state's population. And that's one of the things that drove me crazy about Rahm Emanuel's 15 state strategy is in the election, the only time we had any hope during on election day was with we started seeing like Kansas and some of the rural states looked like they were kind of moving more left than we expected. And I think we didn't throw any resources behind those states. And a lot of them were really hurt by Trump tariffs the last time around. And I really feel like we had no way to like approach those people. And that's different than like what's going on in Michigan, where people Michigan last time, where they had like 30 or 40 members of their family killed in Gaza. And we're telling, oh, Trump's going to be worse. Like, how can that possibly be worse? Now, when I mentioned before, like about hipsters, these tend to be very privileged white people who don't face the repercussions for their actions. And sometimes when you have privilege, you can go, I'm going to survive Trump pretty good. They're not coming after me until they go through a lot of other people. And you can't really vote that way. And I saw that, like I said, about those elections in the past. What really did shake up some of my friends was when a woman said, look, I understand what you're talking about, but I want to marry my girlfriend. And that's not going to happen if this crazy right-wing Republican becomes governor. And it kind of shook people like, oh, yeah, it actually affects people's lives. So like David Hogg, I look at him, and yeah, I think our money is better spent in the general. But if you're going to say that, what about the fact that Hakeem Jeffries has a PAC, Team Blue, whose purpose is to defend these lazy incumbents versus progressive challengers? What about the fact that they won't hire consultants to work on mainstream Democrats if they also work for a progressive challenger? You're putting your thumb on the scale. And if you put your thumb on the scale, you can't expect people to want to abide by, what the result is, because they won't feel any part of it. And we got to reach out to everybody. One of the things that I loved right after the election that I hate now are those FAFO, the fool around, let's say it that way, and find out people. Because, it's just kind of sometimes fun to laugh at you voted for Trump, this is what you get. Except a lot of those people were conned. And they were uninvested. The Republicans said, oh, they just want good things. The Democrats said they just want good things, and they picked the Republican. And now they realized, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. If that's not someone that you can really talk to and say, maybe your interests are more with ours, I don't know who is, and maybe laughing at them isn't the best idea. I feel like there's the conned and the con artists, and I have no sympathy for the people who are grifting off of this or the people who are actually in policy who are hurting other people. But the people who are way far down and don't listen to election coverage until 2 days before the election and pick somebody, I think we can turn those people into conscientious voters when they see, oh, these things do have consequences. And
my wife, her uncle is like extreme MAGA. He listens to Fox News all the time. And her aunt was dying of Alzheimer's. And so she went to go visit them for a couple of weeks. And he had Fox News on all the time, like all the time. She was just inundated with it. And my wife is, when we first started dating, she said she was a Republican like you, Jack. She's like in that ex-smoker type of politics now. Mm-hmm. And like she asked me, why am I a Democrat? And I explained to her why I'm a Democrat, and she became a Democrat. Now she's maybe to the left of me. But she went to go visit her uncle, and she was just inundated with Fox News for 2 weeks. She came back and she was like, it's almost like she had to detox or something. Like it's like if you're just getting pounded with it all the time and it's just disinformation, it's easy to start buying the lies because you never hear anything but the lies. There is no truth ever spoken on that channel. And so of course people are going to be duped.
And it's the same lies. That's why I don't think it matters who we run. If we don't, I love the quote from Hamilton, if you don't stand for something, what will you fall for? I don't think it matters because we could have run Joe Manchin for president and Fox News would have been saying he's a socialist.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They're going to be attacking
everyone we've run since Walter Mondale was a communist. But don't call Donald Trump a fascist.
I mean,
even though he's a fascist.
There's another piece to this though that we need to acknowledge. Greg Palast has done a lot of reporting on this. That people have just been thrown off the voter rolls. All of these districts have been manipulated into not being actually useful into representing what the local community actually wants. So as much as I feel like it's a mistake to blame voters on where we are right now, and the real mistake is the system in which we're at. I worked on a campaign in 2017 in New York State, the Constitutional Convention campaign. So in the United States, we have about 35 or 40 states that have a rule in their state constitutions that they can every 25 years or so they can call a constitutional convention. And this possibility is such a big political possibility that no one ideology or entity can actually take it over, which is why everyone is against it. In New York City, both New York Right to Life and the Planned Parenthood PAC wanted everyone to vote no against this. The NRA wants people to vote no against this. The cops actually were caught with bumper stickers saying vote no to the Constitutional Convention. And, this is one of these real civic opportunities for people to redraft what our political agreements are with more people in the room other than white landowning men, which is how this entire country has been set up. We were talking before about patriotism. I can't be patriotic for a country that never wanted someone like me to have a political voice. As a day one Occupy Wall Street organizer, I've had people say to me, and with the Stop Cop City stuff, say stuff to me like, you're a great American. And I'm like, no, I'm not a great American. I am a person who is showing up, wanting to be in community with other people in a way that is equitable and filled with justice. I'm not here to fight for America. I'm here to fight for a world which respects everyone in an equal fashion and is very interested in repairing the harm that colonization and capitalization has done to all of our communities across the United States. And by fact, an effect across the world, since, it's a major world power at this moment. That might change in the next few years. It's changing now. Yeah. So,
I think you make a really good point, and I've thought of this a lot, that before they make all these, voter purges and changing the laws that are really designed to keep minorities and women and poor people from being able to vote, anybody that is in a democratic demographic. That's what voting laws, these Republican voting laws are designed to do, is to keep Democrats from being able to vote. And then after the election, we're like, why didn't the Democrats show up to vote? And we're mystified. And it's because they couldn't. They were outlawed.
But it's so deep, Mr. Kelly, that, people of color have never been a minority in this land. We have always been the majority of peoples in this land, but the people who have colonized and who control the United States have convinced us that those of color are the minority, which that has never been the case. You know, one of the largest slave uprisings in the United States happened just a few months after the uprising in Haiti, and it happened in South Carolina, and 80% of the people who lived in Charleston were of color and enslaved.
Wow.
And that is why they came down so hard on everyone. And I think they like hung and executed over 100 people in the downtown of Charleston when this happened. Because they wanted to put so much fear in the minority, which was actually the majority. They were only the minority as far as who held power. And we have to like undo all of that in our brains, because that's really what's enabling the people who want us dead or just used for profit, you know, in control and unchallenged. Rant over. I'm sorry.
No. There's a lot of good rants going on. This is a rantopia.
I used to teach about Denmark VC and the South Carolina uprising. So very good point.
Do you have a rant to rant, Teddy?
No.
I don't. Just say, as long as while you're thinking about it, I admire your beard game, sir. You have a tremendous beard game.
You do.
Thank you. Yeah, it's got a lot more gray hair in it now than it used to. But also, I just wanted to say thanks for inviting me on. I have to log off now.
Okay.
But I've enjoyed the conversation. So.
All right. So, hasta la vista then?
Yes.
Yeah. You can find me on Blue Sky, Report by Wilson. And then for those that are interested, my newsletter is radicalreports.org.
Great follow on Blue Sky, by the way.
Definitely add you.
All right. So, what was this? I think, are we at maybe this is a good just drop off point for this show then. I think we've all, I really enjoy these conversations and I want more of them. I love talking to people that I don't agree with everything, but also make really good points that make me think. Because I feel like if I stop changing my mind, if I stop moving, that means I stopped learning. And my whole goal with this channel and with all of my social media and my Substack is to learn things, is to progress, and then to kind of relay what I have learned. So, everybody has made points that have made me think, and I thank you for that, and thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, Jack, I think you were one of the people here who was not. You were kind of hesitant about open borders, right? You were like, you got to change things, but you're not there with like 100% open.
I would almost put my limitations on the border situation as being more a question of management and logistics.
So it's not about whether, it's about how.
Right.
Let me ask you this then. Let me ask you this. You feel like you need to have something. Can we agree we don't need ICE? Can we just get rid of ICE? They're gone.
Oh hell yeah.
Okay, good.
I should know.
And I also think we can eliminate Crossplay Christie and
of course.
Some of the finest teachers, in fact, my last class, some of the finest students I had were being housed in tents. Because remember when Texas just sent a whole bunch over to Chicago? They were like such amazing students. And like one of my classes, I've horrible at languages and many years trying, I've never been able to pick up more than just a smattering of Spanish. And my students, so many of them in that class, spoke nothing but a smattering of English. And that usually really sucks as a teacher. I've been through that situation a lot. But because there were so many and I was trying so hard to communicate and they were so invested in trying so hard to communicate, it was just a wonderful experience. And I tried very hard not to laugh at their attempts at English and let them just have a hysterical laughing fit at my horrible attempts at Spanish. And then, so those students, I was terrified someday I'd come to school and I'd have 9 kids or 8 kids in my class because everybody else got sent back. So I am not saying I want borders and I'm just saying I do think that like there is a logistic thing, but it's such a minor point. It really is. I probably shouldn't have brought it up because it is like such a minor issue. It's like, do you believe we should pay income tax? Sure. Do you believe we should have do you believe we should have 72-page form or the 63-page form? Whichever way you feel, there's a much bigger story than 72-page form or 63-page form. And that's kind of how it is. The logistics is such a small aspect of it. For the most part, I do agree. And I do believe they add a whole lot more to the economy than we realize. And I mean, I ended a long distance relationship with someone in Iowa, and she was just talking about just how devastated they were because so many of the people that they need, from everything from agricultural to like I think Hormel is local. I mean, so many of the jobs that were supporting their local economy were being done by these people.
And which isn't great either when you have 14-year-old kids working in meat houses. Like, it's not a great, like, just everybody, and they're there because they can't get other jobs because of this horrible system that's in place.
Right.
And children should never be working, like, ever. That's not simple.
I once did a 1-hour live coast-to-coast interview in character about child labor laws and being supported. It was right after Mike Lee was in favor of it. And the child labor law thing, we actually did have 2 people who called up. They didn't get through. They didn't put them through, but who were in favor of the child labor law being eliminated. So they're out there.
I just finished, if you guys haven't seen it or if you want to see it or if anybody watching wants to see it, I just finished an explainer video on the damage that mass deportations is going to do to the economy. It is a far bigger danger than tariffs. Not that tariffs aren't all by themselves going to send us into a recession, but the mass deportation will cause the greatest financial crisis, greater than 2008. Like, it'll cause the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression. Could reach like over 10% unemployment, over 10% inflation, and over a 10% contraction of the economy. Like, it's monumentally stupid. If I wanted to devastate the economy, the first thing I would do is mass deportations. It's that bad. So anyway, if you want to watch it, I explain everything there and have all the go into it. Actually, doing that is what made me think, you know what, we need we need to just let open borders happen.
Let everyone in. Just let them all
open borders. What's the big deal? Like, I mean, it's not like everybody in the world is going to want to come over. And a lot of the immigration numbers are kind of faked because, you have returns versus deportations, and returns are, like Jose comes over and then he gets sent back that day, and then he comes over the next day and he gets sent back the next day. And so each one of those is called an encounter. And then we act like Jose ends up being over here 10 times when he's not over here at all. And that's how the Republicans confuse the math. And while Obama and Biden both did a lot of returns, they weren't nearly as heavy on deportations as what Trump is doing. And that's where he's like interior deportations, where he's sending back people that have been living here since they were children. And,
he wanted to send people from South America to Libya.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's just evil. There's no question. I mean, like, he's sending people to die in concentration camps because they're brown. Forget it. He didn't even know he had tattoos when it's just you know, and then they make up all these malicious lies about them afterward. Anyway, like just and you know what? It would make the nation more secure too, because then you don't have Border Patrol worrying about, you know, people coming over here illegally. Yeah, Border Patrol worried about people smuggling over fentanyl or, you know,
but
like if we're dangerous crap.
If we're actually talking about how to get public safety, one of the biggest things that we could do is enact Medicare for all and a Green New Deal. Again, back to the point, most people are in jail because of moving violations in traffic. All of a sudden, you have public transportation. A lot of that is not going to be.
Yeah, I'm just talking about Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah,
and you know, like there's a whole bunch of crap we could do, but you know, like
before 2011, there was a time before DHS, and there will be a time after DHS.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize DHS was formed because of 9/11.
Right.
Like there was no DHS.
Right.
But anyway, so and actually none of them came over illegally either. You know, like none of the people that were involved in 9/11 would have been prevented by DHS, just as an aside. So anyway, I think we're coming up on a good time to end here. Yeah. And I like to end before we go over 2 hours too, because like logistical reasons. I appreciate you all so much for coming on. If you want to, can everybody just share their Blue Sky?
Oh yeah, I'm Priscilla Grimm on Twitter and Blue Sky.
Yeah, I use Blue Sky. I'm kitoconnell.com, which is also my homepage. You can get on my mailing list there. I'm also active on Mastodon. You can find me as Kit O'Connell or O'Connell on there.
Okay, and
I am Rep Jack Kimball, no spaces, on both Blue Sky and on Twitter. And I just want to make one quick comment on what you said, which was about the deportations hurting us. Is more. I think what's going to hurt us more than anything is that nobody likes us.
Yeah.
The whole thing in Canada with the elbows up and the going out of their way to buy Canadian and not American is now really spreading. In France, there's a website and an app now which is really taking over that lets people know that even these French-sounding companies are actually owned by Americans. And if you want to talk about non-governmental action, there you go. Because
how do you piss off Canada?
I know.
Pissing off Dolly Parton or something. I mean, like, how do you do that?
The nicest people in the world when I've been there. I was just like,
because they have Medicare for all.
Yeah.
They can get therapy when they need it. Like, this whole country of the United States just needs an army of therapists to help us move past and evolve into what we need to be next, which is a community focused on care and not harm.
I've sort of become an honorary Canadian, and I just got into just teasing them. And when I was doing that, it somehow got mentioned that like I was like rooting really hard for Canada in the big hockey game because after we beat them in the first round, we were such ugly Americans about it that I was more invested in Canada beating us than I was in 1980. Well, maybe just slightly less than I was in 1980 with us in the gold medal game. It was just like, you know. So I've had at least 30, maybe 40 offers of sanctuary from Canadians.
Oh, well, there you go.
Come over.
I think Canada should make us the 11th province.
I'm so mad at
third territory. I don't know.
I am so mad at Wisconsin because when they went red, they stopped us from having a nice contiguous, like you could take Illinois and you could just take the blue parts without going into the red parts and make us part of Canada. But now Wisconsin's in the way. So,
well, you can. Well, now you can't. No.
I'm gonna bounce, y'all. It's so good to be here. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for joining, Kit.
Can I make one quick plug real fast?
Yes, plug away.
So I just put up in my description my link tree. I'm right now, in the middle of a really horrible legal situation,
Right.
which has really challenged my ability to support myself.
Yeah.
So I have fundraisers going on constantly to help me and my daughter survive and stay fed and housed and all that. So if anybody would like to help me continue to live without, a lot of hardship enacted by the state of Georgia, like see it as a way to say fuck you to Georgia and Governor Kemp by giving a little donation to Priscilla Grimm. Keep her eating, keep the lights on.
I will make sure to put that in the description of the video, and
Thank you.
I'll send that out on my Blue Sky account as well. So.
Thank you.
All right. So thanks you guys for joining. And Priscilla, it was nice getting to know you. I did not know you before this at all. So now I do, and I'm happy I do. And Jack, we've been buddies for a little while. So
wonderful meeting you, Priscilla. Thanks for having me for sure.
Shim Khan Kelly. Thank you.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.